The last thing Dr. King said to me before he was murdered, Martin said, I sit here deeply concerned that I suspect we're leading our nation on an integration trip that has us integrating into a burning house. Most of the politicians I know of make promises only to walk into the places of power and then deny us. I guess part of the reason I'm here is to really look through the ravages of the Democratic Party and see if anything is really worth salvaging.
You've had a very busy day, I'm sure, after that interview, right?
Yes, and also it's the last week of the primary election. And so, yeah, we are in the middle of the thick of the GOTV.
Right. So do you want to talk a little bit about, well, you can address things. I'm sure that the platform pledge I put up is probably very much in line with yours. But if you want to just talk about any of those issues there, or if you want to talk specifically about the interview today.
And I apologize, Kelly, that I haven't been able to look at the full spectrum of issues that that No Peasant stands for. But what you played just now, what you showed just now on the screen, absolutely, as a revolutionary socialist, I would agree with all of that. Opposition to imperialist war, defending the freedom of speech, ending the surveillance state, and all of the, basically the government transparency, all of that. Yeah, I agree with all of those things. And in fact, what it shows, the fact that you have all these individual questions there, and the fact that if you looked at opinion polls on each of these specific issues, you would see a majority of ordinary Americans agreeing on those issues, which tells you that while there may be disagreements on maybe questions about where, like a fundamental direction of society, I definitely have powerful disagreements with people who identify as libertarian. I don't agree with what. Sorry, what was the name of the person who was just?
Oh, John Sully Roman. He's independent, but I believe he's more left-leaning. But
it didn't sound left-leaning to me, honestly, because he was saying something about, this government.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm only getting Kelly's audio. I'm not getting Kshama's for some reason. Is anyone else having that issue?
I can hear her.
Oh. Okay.
Sorry, this has been an issue a couple times. Maybe go out and come back in, Phil. I'm not really sure why. You're on a phone, right?
Yeah, I'll try again.
Okay, sorry. So I'm sorry, Kshama, what exactly was it that he said?
Yeah, he was, this is what he said. I just got the tail end of it, obviously, and so I apologize if I'm misinterpreting, but he was saying something about how this government is not capitalist. That is a very, and that we need free market capitalism. That is a common position of libertarians, and my analysis is that's not correct. That's not accurate. It is capitalism, and the idea that capitalism could work in a way that could actually be fair to billions of people on the planet is simply nonsense. That's not going to happen, which is why I'm a revolutionary socialist, because I don't believe that capitalism can be reformed in order to be able to be a just system. Capitalism in its fundamental nature is completely unjust because it is a class-based society, and by definition, the upper classes, under capitalism, we would call it the capitalist class, basically the billionaires and multimillionaires, they exploit the rest of society, particularly working people, but it's also not a system that's conducive for small businesses. But for the most part, what they do is the wages that the system, that the capitalist class pays to the workers is a small fraction of the total value of the wealth that working people generate, and the lion's share of that wealth is seized by the people at the top, which is how you get a situation where the top today, which you have, which is the top 1% of the United States, owns $55 trillion. And then on the other end, half of American households are saying that they can't even afford to buy groceries because of the dire economic straits they're in. And this is in the richest nation in the history of humanity. So I think that that's that's the reality under capitalism. But my point originally was that even though there may be differences in the analysis of what capitalism is and how does it work and all of that, setting all of that aside, if you look at the opinion polls on specific issues, should the wars in the Middle East be ended? Should the $1 trillion that are being spent on war, should that be used instead for housing, healthcare, education, jobs, infrastructure, basically the day-to-day needs of regular Americans? Should we have universal public health care? Should we prevent cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, and social assistance? Should we have full funding for public education? All of these issues on that full spectrum, the vast majority of ordinary Americans, like American working people, are in strong agreement, but neither the Democratic nor the Republican parties represent any of these politics. So regardless of ideological definitions that people assign to them their own thinking, the vast majority of the American working class is well to the left of the politics that's on offer between the Democratic and Republican parties. I think that's the main feature, and on that basis, there can be a lot of working class unity that is built on specific issues. And I'll just end by this point by talking about how just one example, which is that in the 2016 Democratic primaries, Bernie Sanders, because with his program for a political revolution against the billionaire class, he was talking about universal public health care, taxes on Wall Street, free university, canceling student debt, all of that. His program was so popular that it electrified tens of millions of American working people. And in the Democratic primaries in West Virginia, he won every single one of the 55 counties in that state. But because the Democratic establishment was determined to keep any semblance of working class agenda out of their primaries, and then when they anointed Hillary Clinton as the candidate in the general election, all 55 counties went to Trump. So it shows you that in reality, the fact is that the majority of working class is getting what we have faced is being straitjacketed between these two parties, neither of which represents our needs. And so we need to unite on that basis rather than focusing the discussion so much on, are you a libertarian, are you a socialist? I don't care. If you want to fight for universal health care, let's come together. If you want to fight to end the wars and end the genocide, end all military aid, fight for free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich, fight for a full and permanent arms embargo on Israel, national rent control, national $25 an hour minimum wage, stop the data centers and the mass layoffs, fight for a public sector living wage jobs guarantee, then let's fight together. I mean, basically, I'm just going through the list of demands that I'm running on. I'm saying that those demands are extremely popular nationally.
Right. Well, it's really my goal, it's my hope that we can have these conversations without people at each other's throats. Because when I think, and I don't want to speak for John because he left, but my understanding is that I think what he was saying is that we don't actually have full free market capitalism, that we have basically a corrupt crony capitalist system where we bail out the banks. And I mean, I think any of us that have been paying attention long enough know, like, the Tea Party had a lot in common with people on the left now. But maybe I should toss it to Phil for this one. Phil, do you want to? Well, I just want to make sure we keep everything. We're going to all be cordial and disagree.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Phil is a very nice person, by the way.
You didn't need to do that. I'm going to be nice.
It's needed when we talk about these things.
I know, but it doesn't need to be, because I think a lot of what Kshama said, I agree with. We don't have a capitalist system now, at least not an ideologically capitalist system. We have one that's we have a government that's under control of capitalists. And so if you expand like the paradigm we've been using week after week to talk about healthcare, and that is we've identified, we all agree on what the problem is, and that is a healthcare system that is captive of the government, which is captive of the insurance industry. And that's why we can't even really have a fair shot at either having free market healthcare or single payer healthcare. And we'll work together on at least breaking in and having a voice in our government. Then that's absolutely something I can agree with, and that's part of what Kshama was talking about. And I'm not here. I mean, I'm a libertarian, and I campaigned with socialists and Greens in 2024. I had a very inclusive campaign at 44,000 or so votes in Wisconsin for U.S. Senate. Was marching with socialists against the wars. Part of the issue. I'll bring this up because I don't think it applies to anyone here, but it was true both of libertarians and socialists and Greens that some people really resented the fact that we were cooperating on these issues. And to me, that's a problem, because that's somebody that's more invested in their party and gatekeeping their party than they are in actually solving the issues. I'm firmly of the belief that we should and can unite against a common enemy. And then someday, hopefully soon, when we've got people of, libertarians, Greens, socialists, whoever on the floor of Congress, and we want to argue about what works or what we think is better, then we'll have an opportunity to do so. But so far, we do not. So there's very little. Actually, the most offensive talk I've heard on this podcast while I was co-hosting was from a guy who called himself a libertarian and then just was terrible.
Yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah.
Well,
but amongst the rest of us, let's talk about what the first thing we need to do is, and that is to break down the door to our government, then decide what to do with it.
And I mean, back me up if you think this is accurate, Phil. But I mean, I've heard since we started doing candidates for Assange, I've heard libertarians saying we would rather fund a public health care system, public option or whatever, than funding bombs. So I mean, that's a start. I don't know, what is your opinion on that, or do you think that is an really unpopular opinion? That's
I don't know, funding public health care. Here's what I'll put it, and I don't want to narrow it down to too many individual issues because they all lead to the same place. And it's true for the current state of capitalism and capitalist countries, socialist countries, and probably goes back at least 100, 150 years. And that is, people of any ideology can't be trusted with power. We're all broken and fallible and corruptible. And the idea that if we just get our people elected, things will change, that I don't know that that's ever worked. I mean, I'm not a historian, but people ask me all the time, like, where is a libertarian or a capitalist country or whatever worked? Well, they don't, because the people with a ton of money take over the government, because the people that are in the government are corrupt and fallible and fallen human beings. I think the same has been true with socialist governments, at least the big ones that I can think of. It might not be as visible, but certainly the oligarchs that control the Soviet Union and control the Chinese communists, whatever, and many other places also got wealthy and controlled vast amounts of resources at the expense of feeding their poor. So to me, our common enemy is government being in control of things, because people that populate government are weak.
Well, I think we all can I jump in, Kelly?
Yes, please do, Sam.
Yeah, I think we all do agree that I mean, what we have now is sort of this corporate fusing with corrupt government, and that's one definition of fascism, of the fusing of the government and corporate power. So that, with the healthcare system, it's that way. With big tech, it's that way. One reason that I've been particularly dissatisfied with DSA, which I haven't investigated heavily other than foreign policy stuff, and I can talk about that, but even on the economic side of things, it's my understanding that DSA is up for nationalizing the airline industry, which seems like a bizarre ask to me, even at their most radical. If you're going to be nationalizing stuff, why not big tech? I think, Kshama, you've talked about nationalizing Amazon. That seems to me to be, when I was a kid, socialists were out to nationalize GM. and now people use the word socialist for the most tepid um, uh, policies. And I think the end result of it is to just simply scare people on the right, because I think that we were coming to a place where you did have people from the left and the right coalesce around, for most obviously, Israel's Gaza genocide, and the U.S. working hand in glove with Israel in that criminal endeavor. And people seem to think that Mamdani and company are making progress on that, but I think it's very superficial at best. And what ends up happening is that it ends up being a scare tactic for people on the right, and everybody gets stuffed back into their partisan boxes.
Yes.
I think that's the dynamic that we're seeing here, and I think is extremely dangerous. And what heightened my concern about all of this most recently was Mamdani talking about the ICC. And what really got to me was the timing of it. I try very closely in my journalism to focus on the timing of things. He made his statement, which sucked all the energy out of the room, just as it was all hands on deck to stop the NDAA, the vote of basically the merger of the U.S. and Israeli militaries, or the further merger. And Netanyahu's on his way to D.C., I understand, for his 8th visit. And he's going to take a victory lap because that passed. That didn't need to pass. If we really were focused, that we might have been able to stop that. And Mamdani effectively took people's eyes off the ball. And then I wrote a piece about that on my Substack. And then what happened was that they ditched Khan, the prosecutor at the ICC. The ICC had ducked for years doing something on Israel. Finally, after the ICJ case, which I pushed for a lot, Khan was basically shamed into finally acting. And then he became the target of the U.S. And just as Mamdani, or just after Mamdani was saying, oh, Trump should get behind the ICC, which obviously wasn't going to happen, you have the ICC ditching Khan. And, it seems set on reverting to its, being a complete instrument of U.S. empire. So the way that things are happening, at least on the foreign policy side, and I think on the economic side as well, I'm extremely concerned about. You had this recurring pattern of, after all the activism around the Iraq War got sucked into the Obama mania, and that led to basically a dead end, and all the energy around Occupy got sucked into Bernie Sanders, and that led to ultimately nothing. And now I'm concerned that the energy around the Gaza genocide is going to, we're going to have very little tangible in our hands. And I think Kshama has spoken to that to some degree. So that's what it looks like from where I sit.
I agree, Sam. I think you created a corollary to the saying, always follow the money to find out what's going on, and that is watch the timing. There's a lot going around about Trump making money on, declaring that peace is near, and then betting on that, and then on Monday morning, we're back at it again, and he makes money off that, and it's curious how that works, but it's pretty obvious too.
Yeah, it shows that there's an underlying structure to it looks. People think that Trump is just acting randomly and insanely. I think that he's a really great salesman for a much deeper structure.
Well, I'm sure you all have seen this. It's 12 seconds long, but I'm going to play it real quick.
Swish, 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 swish. Swish, swish, swish. The wipers on the bus go swish, swish, swish. All through the town.
So for me, there's Mamdani with war criminal Obama, who I actually voted for twice, indoctrinating children. And I think the writing has been on the wall from the beginning that we're being played. That's my view on it. I don't hold back on those things anymore. I used to be a little bit more, I don't know, tepid about it, but it was the genocide in Gaza that has made me just, I don't hold back anymore. I think it's all a game. And I think Glenn Greenwald wrote about this back in, I think 2010. He called it the rotating villain. Have you all
Right.
heard that term before?
That's the brilliance of the two-party system, right? There's always somebody to blame, some terrible, inhuman people that we're aghast at who they support and what they support. And
Well, it's the allowing a vote that looks good when it's not going to have any impact, basically.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and also if you look at what happened with the House vote on the NDA, the war funding bill that just got passed by the US House, they made sure, they meaning the Democratic and Republican parties together, the establishments made sure that there were just enough votes, just enough Democrats voting yes on it, so that the rest could posture as good guys. And in reality, I would say it's a rotating villain, yes, but I was thinking recently that it's actually more like a rotating good guy, because most of them are villainous. And sometimes when their backs are against the wall, they have to pretend like good guys. So Adam Smith, my opponent currently in the primary election, and by the way, the primary elections on August 4th. So we are right now our focus is in getting out the vote. And it's so important to point out that Adam Smith is one of the generals among the warmongers. He's not just a vote for the wars and the genocide and for funding ICE, which is true that in fact the Democratic Party is for the most part absolutely horrible in that, if you look at the votes, the 173 Democrats voted to fund tens of billions of dollars for the genocide in Gaza, and the same bills also included a ban on United Nations food assistance to Gaza at a time when there have been reports of catastrophic levels of mass starvation. But what did Adam Smith do? Right? Adam Smith is the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, which means that he is the most powerful guy as far as war funding is concerned, next to the Republican Mike Rogers, who's the chair of the committee. And right now, because the Republicans have the majority in the House. And so Adam Smith and Mike Rogers, they are co-authors of these war funding bills over and over again. So in December, there was a bill that was passed to give Trump more than $906 billion for war. This bill that just passed is a bill that gives Trump and overall Pentagon the ability to spend $1 trillion on war, over $1 trillion. And the bill also includes elements that will fuse the US and Israeli military, and also just a massive escalation of weaponry for Israel. Adam Smith literally co-authored that bill and the bill in December, and he voted no on his bill. Who the hell votes on their own bill? I'll tell you who votes no on their own bill: a guy who is afraid of losing his election. That is the power of running really strong campaigns against these incumbents. And right now he is very afraid. Does that mean we can get complacent? Absolutely not, because we are running an uphill campaign. The corporate media has invisibilized us, and unfortunately most of self-described progressive media has also done a media blackout on us. And so we have brought our campaign on its own steam, on the steam of the demands that we are fighting for, like I said, for an end to all military aid to Israel, and permanent and full arms embargo on Israel, free healthcare, winning free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich, and so on. And that is why this campaign has electrified ordinary people in this district, Washington State District, Congressional District 9. But the point is that there are rotating good guys that the Democratic Party carries out, and so does the Republican Party. But we're talking about a population that may have some illusions in the Democratic Party. That's why we're focused on that. But the point is that that's what they will do. And in fact, Adam Smith recently sent out a tweet saying, "Oh yeah, it's the minimum wage is too low. It's time to raise it to $15 an hour, federal minimum wage." And people, working people are like, "What are you talking about? Kshama Sawant already raised the minimum wage in Seattle to $15 an hour 12 years ago. And Seattle's minimum wage is now $21.30 an hour. And that's not enough, actually. And we want inflation increases. That is why the wage in Seattle is that high. and is the highest in the nation. And we need at least $25 an hour nationally. But the reason that the national minimum wage is still at $7.25 an hour is because both parties, the Democratic and Republican Party, despite their cosmetic differences, represent the interests of the capitalist class. That is why I would say that the main distinction we need to make in order to win some serious victories for the working class and start changing the direction of American society, which we need to do urgently, especially given how urgent fighting the climate crisis is class. The main divide is the class divide, and we have to absolutely focus on that. That is why I think framing it as government and not government is not that helpful or insightful, in the sense that under capitalism, any government, whatever you call it, government is the government of the capitalist state. For the most part, what we call government under capitalism exists. That state exists in order to protect the interests of the billionaires and multimillionaires, in order to keep society stable enough for governing it stably enough so that they can keep making profits at the expense of the vast majority of people. And the reason they need to do that is because when the vast majority of people are in a race to the bottom, there will be moods of revolt. So right now we are seeing that type of moment. There's a mood of revolt and anger among the American working class across the nation, across blue states, red states, purple states, and that is terrifying to the capitalist class and their political representatives. And we're already seeing these Democratic primaries in New York and Colorado, where new candidates have toppled seemingly invincible incumbents in the Democratic Party who have been supporting the genocide. And all of that is happening because there's a reckoning. But that reckoning will only be cosmetic. It's only going to be in the form of a few Democrats defeated, and then the end of that, unless you have a real fight back in Congress. And so that's the question that you have to ask. Like, what are the new people who are getting elected? What are they going to do differently than the AOC and the squad? Because at the same time that you had more and more so-called squad members being elected, more and more representatives from the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, at that same time, you have seen Biden and the Democrats preside over a genocide. Never forget, the genocide started under Biden. You have seen the breaking of the railroad workers' strike. We've seen the fact that even though the Democrats had a majority in both houses of Congress when Biden was president, they refused to pass any semblance of public health care. In fact, they even refused to make the ACA enhanced tax subsidies permanent, which is also just shameful, because everybody knew that if they lost the presidential election in 2024 and Trump came back to power, that Trump and the Republicans would take away those tax subsidies and plunge another 20 or so, 22, 24 million people in crisis by not being able to afford healthcare. So, and that's exactly what happened. And so I think the main message that needs to go out there is independence from the parties of capitalism. And people can agree or disagree on socialism or libertarianism and all of that. I think the main task here is to unite the working class on a class basis, not on the basis of are you libertarian, are you socialist, because there will be differences on that.
I don't disagree with you. I think that is the essential struggle. I agree with about 75% of what you say, and then you throw some shade on libertarians about halfway through. But that's okay. It's okay.
No, I'm not. No, please don't. No. Like that.
I'm just teasing.
No. But we have to be serious here. I'm not throwing shade. This is my opinion. We can.
I understand.
We can have political disagreements, but when you use terminology like that, it actually hampers the potential for us to build unity on a working class basis, and that's why we can have disagreements, but we should be honest about them, and then proceed to fight on the things that we agree on. Right now, it's a unique moment. The majority of the working class is against Israel. They are horrified at what's happening in Palestine, and this is the most urgent issue, because not only do we have a genocide happening in Gaza with the largest number of child amputees and just horror after horror, the genocide is now expanding to the West Bank. The violent settlements are expanding in the West Bank. So it is our moral obligation to unite on that basis to end military aid to Israel.
I agree.
Yeah.
And one of the things you brought forward when you were talking is people getting elected to office, and then what do they do? What are they able to do? And without any projection on what might happen if a bunch of DSA folks get elected or libertarians get elected, let's remember back to when the Tea Party quote unquote revolution happened in 2010. There were like 15 or 20 people elected to Congress who were a different kind of Republican, constitutionalist, kind of libertarian, whatever. And where are they now, and how long did they last? Most of them either got bought out and became part of the establishments in order to stay in office, or they got primaried out by the Republican, by the Republican system. The last remaining ones were Justin Amash up till 2020, and he declared as a libertarian before he got primaried out and didn't run for re-election, and Thomas Massie, who the massive Israeli war chest managed to fool the people in Kentucky to get him not reelected. Mm-hmm. So I just want to point that out, that there's a definite parallel there. We want to do it. That's not to say we shouldn't try. I mean, I've run 5 times for office, so I'm all in with doing exactly what you described, Kshama, and that is to try and kill the uniparty, break it open, and let's talk about next steps once we can get our foot in the door. I just want to be careful about what we're planning to do, and the people that might wear a costume in order for us to support them, Democrats or whatever, independents, whatever. What they really want is to be in power, and then they'll they'll fold and prove the fact that they're not morally there for the right reasons.
Well, I have to say, I noticed during the Breaking Points interview today that both Ryan Grimm and Crystal Ball seemed to spend quite a bit of time kind of talking down. It was like, how many numbers, what are your numbers now compared to the DSA? And just kind of, because this is what the media does. I think they really fear the people uniting and doing what we're doing here, right? And they also were trying to convince you that, like, I think the quote was something about when Bernie ran, I read that Crystal attempts to place credit for the impact Bernie Sanders had on the fact that he ran as a Democrat. And right. I don't think this is so far from the truth. I mean, the truth is that like 12% of the people, as you talked about in West Virginia, 12% of Bernie's supporters ended up voting for Trump because they were like, he turned around and said, vote for Hillary Clinton. I mean, I remember getting in an argument with Michael McFaul, and if you know who he is, former Russian ambassador, on Twitter, and he was literally vote shaming me for 3 days, telling me I was in a purple state and I needed to vote for Hillary. And I'm like, I would just as soon vote for Mitt Romney. What's the difference? Like, but they work so hard because they need to convince. And what I'm most concerned about now is watching the next generations fall for this on the Democrat side. And like I said, as soon as I saw Bernie courting all the DSA candidates, and that's not to say that they're not genuine, but like you said in the interview, what will they do when they get there? Are they going to fight against their party in the way that Thomas Massie has against Republicans? And on that note, I think Massie and Ro Khanna are a good example of some of that work that can be done together. But yeah, that's really my concern right now. Is I think the next generation is being brainwashed into thinking that something's going to be different with those candidates that are running under that party. I don't see it happening.
Okay, I've got a question for both candidates, because when our other co-host is not here.
I'm not quite a candidate yet.
All right. Well, you can answer as if you are one, Sam. How's that?
Fine.
Well, we tend to lose track of campaign stuff when we get into ideology, which I love very, very much. But what I've run into in my campaigns is the people that are open-minded and pay attention to politics. There's a chance for them to agree. But so many people don't pay attention, don't care, because they're not hungry. They're not devoid of entertainment. That's the people that need to be swung. Now, as terrible as the things that are going on are, the genocide, the war, the corruption, believe me, that keeps me up at night almost every night, unless I have a little brandy or something. But getting the people that we need to have electoral victories to support us is a whole other challenge. It's a whole other thing. So I'd ask both of you, regardless of whether you're in a campaign or not, this applies to you too, Sam. What do you think needs to happen, or what is the message, or what needs to go on to wake regular voters up, not just regular people who vote, to what's going on and make them care enough to vote for somebody who they think might not be that likely to win.
Sam, you want to take
Maybe.
that?
Well, I think Shauna would probably be more experienced in this. I mean, if I run, this would be the first time that I do run. I mean, I think that people do care and they are disgusted by the system, and they've seen all of these dead-end promises, and they sort of conclude that I'm going to check out of electoral politics. I think that's a significant percentage of the U.S. public has come to that conclusion, and it's not completely irrational, but it does miss the opportunities of when there are people who come around, or when there can be mobilizations that can be meaningful and genuinely materially change things. One thing that I focused on is the how. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the DSA candidates that are coming into Congress could be completely phony for all I know. I'm not a mind reader. I mean, I've critiqued a lot of members of Congress that, for example, just on the war stuff, they claim that they'll say that Biden's bombing of Yemen is unconstitutional, and they'll say that Trump's bombing of Iran is illegal and unconstitutional, but then they will just pass a resolution saying you shouldn't do it. Well, that doesn't materially change things. And they should at least have the courage of their convictions. It just takes one congressperson to introduce articles of impeachment to, even if you don't get a lot of other people voting for that, to at least put forward a clear case, put forward, in the movie Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, puts a glass of water to say, the people will drink a dirty water, but if you give them a clean water, then they'll see the difference and they'll be attracted to that. So, I long for a member of Congress who will actually have courage of their convictions to use everything that they can in their. I mean, it's kind of like how I've tried to approach my journalism, right? I get into a room and I'm going to use every journalistic tool that I can possibly use to say you're not going to get away with this bullshit. And I want members of Congress who can act that way as well. Right. And I think people will be attracted to that.
Oh, they definitely are. We see it when it happens. But as you again said today, Kshama, that you become enemy number one.
Right. But I don't know if there's an opportunity to use that. Like Trump lives off the hate against him, even though it's all phony. So there might be an opportunity in there. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kshama.
Yeah, no. I first of all, I totally agree with what Sam was saying, that for the most part, the question is not how do we get people to engage, ordinary people to engage, how do we get them to pay attention, how do we get them to support. No, for the most part, actually, especially now, but this was true even 10, 15 years ago, for the most part, the American working class, the majority of the American working class is angry at the status quo and is ready to fight. But there's a big difference between what they want and what leadership is on offer. And that's why, as Sam was saying correctly, most working class people, especially young people, are turned off politics because what they see for the most part is slimy careerist politicians in both the Democratic and Republican parties. And they're especially angry that the progressives, Democrats, who run on progressive agendas and going around, cultivating a progressive persona, who then end up fighting for and winning absolutely nothing. In fact, under their watch, things are getting worse and worse and worse. And so, and there's a lot of anger among the Democratic base, for example, that the Democratic Party politicians are not really fighting against Trump. Look at the situation we are in. As I said, a majority of the Congressional Progressive Caucus voted for tens of billions of dollars for the genocide in Gaza. The half of the Congressional Black Caucus is AIPAC bankrolled, and they just endorsed Haley Stevens in the Senate race, in the Senate Democratic primary in Michigan. It is just absolutely horrendous. I mean, this is the Democratic Party for you. And so Yeah, and then on the other hand, the Republican Party is openly, much more openly anti-worker and pro-war. And so, yeah, understandably, working class people are disgusted, and the responsibility is not on them. The responsibility is on the leadership, meaning if we intend to play any leadership role in actually changing the course of American future, then we have an obligation to fight for a politics, present a politics that will actually re-energize and mobilize the same working people who are otherwise disenchanted and disgusted by the politics on offer. And that's the basis on which that's the political basis that we are running our congressional campaign on. And that's also the basis on which I won 4 elections in Seattle. I was on the Seattle City Council for a decade, and I left office without having lost any of my elections. The last election we fought was against an attempted recall on me from Trump supporting billionaire corporate landlords, and we defeated that too. And every single election, every subsequent election was harder. Subsequent re-election was harder than the original election, precisely because we won serious working class victories, and that made, on the basis of building movements, on the basis of using my office to build movements, despite me being one socialist on the city council. And that made me more and more, I mean, the ruling class recognized me more and more as the biggest threat to overcome in Seattle politics. And that's why each election had more and more opposition. In 2019, Amazon threw down $1 million money bomb against us. And so, we defeated all of that. But the way we did that was unite working class people around concrete demands that electrified them, that re-energized them back into politics on the basis of coming around a campaign and a candidate who had never sold out. See, that's the main thing. It's not, we can't just generally have a lament that people are not engaged when mostly what's on offer to them is, rotten careerist politicians. Why should they engage on it? I wouldn't engage in any of the campaigns of any of the Democrats and Republicans. But
there are campaigns all over the country with libertarians, independents, socialists running, who present a third choice and who campaign on many of the things that you're talking about and I talk about and we agree on. And in odd numbered years, polling shows that people want independent third-party candidates on the ballot. And then as we get to like the middle of the even numbered year, they start, because they're being influenced by big money. We agree on that.
Of course.
They're being shared, so that was the genesis of my question.
Yes, no, of course. I'm not, this was not me being negative about the question. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, that is what we have to offer. Campaigns, right. Yes, independent campaigns that are organized around concrete demands. And so, yes, we need that type of campaigns. And we can see that when those campaigns have a serious strategy of, and a real ground game, that working people will rally around it. And that's not to say that it's going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. And in fact, I have said many times that if your election campaigns, let alone your re-election campaigns, are a cakewalk, then you're not fighting for the working class. You're not a threat to the ruling class. And if you're not a threat to the ruling class, you don't actually win anything of substance. So, though it's not, those things don't exist in isolation. That is what building a movement that is a serious threat to the profit machinery of the capitalist class is what forces them to concede. So that's how we grab concessions from the ruling class. That's the basis on which we won the highest minimum wage in the nation in Seattle. Using my one elected office, we won the Amazon tax. We won a whole host of renters' rights. We were so strong on renters' rights that the corporate landlord lobby could not win a single victory, really, of any consequence while I was in office for 10 years. That's the kind of fighting movements that provide a threat to the bosses and their parties. That is what we need to do. And I agree with you. And just to clarify, I was not in any way disagreeing with what you were saying. In fact, I was actually getting to the point to say that, in fact, you see the potential for uniting ordinary people on the basis of political program, even more so now. One clear example is the war and the genocide that we've already talked about. But think about the anger against the data centers. I mean, the hundreds of thousands, millions indeed of people who are moving into action against data centers in local movements in these small suburban cities. They are not, let alone being socialist, they've never been political really before. And so, this is a crucial issue that can unite working class people when Mormons in Utah move into struggle and go to the congressional town halls and scream at their Congress members, how could you allow this data center to go through? That's when you know you have a unifying issue. The fight
Agreed.
against data centers
Agreed.
is actually on the horizon, is actually a very crucial class war that we can unite the working class on.
Let me add one to that. Flock cameras.
Yes,
We have both
yes.
data centers and flock cameras in
Yes.
Wisconsin, and libertarians are fighting alongside everyone else except for the establishment, Democrats
Yes.
and Republicans. And despite the fact that municipalities at every level, town, city, county, state, want them to happen because their palms are being greased by those those companies, we're uniting together, and that helps. You're absolutely right. Building around those issues on which we all agree and that are clearly unjust, where we're not trying to educate somebody about an issue. They already feel it. They already know it's unjust. They already feel that way around their kitchen table or when they're talking with their family. They know it's wrong. They're willing to fight right off the bat rather than having us try to explain to them why the war machine or the Fed or whatever it might be. That's where we have an opportunity. I 100% agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a very large group of people that voted for Trump. Mainly, there's the age divide, just like there is on the other side. But they're very upset with Trump. They're not, they're no longer MAGA or whatever. He campaigned on stopping the wars, and so I think this is a very unique opportunity to join forces there. And that's, I'm glad we kind of touched on the socialism, capitalism thing, because I really see that this is what all they have at this point is to try to divide people on that. And it's very obvious in, just I've got a clip here, but I don't know if you have a hard stop, Kshama, but of Representative McGovern. Hold on a second. Here it is. I wonder if you guys have seen this. Let me just get it where I can play it, and it's not. Here we go.
The Republican Party's new favorite talking point is calling Democrats communists. I mean, oh my God, Mr. Speaker. I mean, really? Really? Communists? Did we accidentally step into a time machine? I get it. I get it. They don't want to talk about the real issues, the bread and butter issues. They don't want to talk about affordability. I guess my question is Joe McCarthy back from the dead? Because it sounds like that's who wrote all the garbage coming from Republicans about communism. These guys, they dust off the same tired, old talking points every time they're backed into a corner. Every time a new poll comes out saying that your economic agenda sucks. They want to play that game? Let's play that game. Let's talk about the Republican Party, a party that worships one man above the Constitution in a cult of personality.
So you get the gist of it.
Yeah.
But what I see, though, is that the Democrats are like feeding into this because though they have these DSA wins, the headlines, the media is splashing all this socialist wins across headlines, which I think is enraging people, that maybe we're supporting Trump, but they're not anymore, but that was their lesser evil. And so because of these words, communism, socialism it triggers people in a way that they can't have a constructive conversation.
It sucks, but it works. I mean, that's one of the things that you have to take into consideration is that Republicans and Democrats and the people that pay them to do what they do are smart and they're wealthy and they're not idiots. And they know that works, and that's what we're up against. I'll never quit fighting, but it's a fact that it does scare people, and they do vote that way. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had two terms of Trump, right?
Right, but isn't it? I mean, it's crazy to me that they're just recycling the same things and like I said, this is like the third or fourth Red Scare now, and it's amazing that it still works on people. But younger generation doesn't know, so.
Yeah, I mean, they trot out different tricks at different times, right? They got terror scares at some points when it seems strategic to do so. They got this now to stuff everybody back into their partisan boxes to prevent the Gaza genocide and other things from bringing regular people together, basically against the 1%. I think one other tactic was to sort of use immigration. I think that there was a concerted effort in many ways to take the genocide issue and Trump, went after activists using immigration stuff and ICE stuff to sort of change the subject from genocide to immigration, because that helps stuff people back into their partisan boxes. And I think that that's all the more ironic because a lot of immigration stuff I view as sort of a symptomatic thing, right? The left and right agree on the wars and the interventions and the crappy corporate trade deals and the drug policies that cause desperate immigration to the United States. And then the system gets the left and the right to try to bicker over immigration policy. So I think that if people of goodwill from both the so-called left and right got their way on all of those other things, somebody was saying that once Congress is filled with libertarians and socialists and Greens, then we can talk about what we disagree with. But I think that if we got our way on a lot of policy questions, a lot of things that we seem to disagree with each other on would actually evaporate. That they wouldn't become seriously vexing issues at all, independent of what things that we agree on that are a clear problem now, ICE abuse and so on. I don't mean to minimize that. That is
which Democrats funded.
Right. Which the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment both got behind, and the Democrats now with that clip that you played, Kelly, is. He's pretending to care about affordability in all of this. This becomes an opportunity for establishment Democrats to pretend that they, care about bread and butter issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, the cost of living crisis has gotten so much worse in the last several years. And it should be pointed out.
I'm sorry, the what crisis?
Cost of living crisis.
Yes.
And it should be pointed out that there was a Democratic Party majority in the House and the Senate under under Clinton, under Obama, and under Biden. And what did the Democratic Party do in all of those periods? It's actually really instructive to look at the real nature, to learn the real nature of the Democratic Party. They completely dismantled social assistance programs under Clinton, expanded mass incarceration to an unprecedented degree, the prison system, and also there were obviously military assaults across Democratic and Republican presidencies. And then under Obama, again, you had invasions and military assaults of 7 different nations. Then you had the absolute door being shut against any type of public health care, including any kind of public option. We didn't get any of that under Obama, even though he was forced to make promises in the election year. And then you had, under Biden, you had a full-blown genocide, the Holocaust of the 21st century being launched. And then, of course, the breaking of the railroad workers' strike. And we saw all the fiascos. It was not one thing. It was one thing after another. You saw the fiasco of Build Back Better. Originally, there were some promises, you're going to have some tens of billions of dollars for this and that and the other, and then kept getting whittled down. And then suddenly you didn't have anything. And this is what the progressive Democrats have done. And that is why it does bring up the serious question of what I call a class struggle-based fighting strategy, because it can't be just a question of accumulating elected positions, because by that measure, the DSA has accumulated lots of positions. It is a question of fight back. And that's what I think all speakers are saying the same thing. We urgently need in Congress a fight back. And there is no prospect of a fight back other than having an or at least one elected representative. And that's why this congressional campaign is so crucial of ours. I'm not saying it's crucial because it's our campaign. I'm saying it's crucial because we need a fighter in Congress. And my whole track record shows that I will be a fighter if elected, because I'm not a careerist politician. Look, if I wanted to build a career for myself, there are a million different ways I could have done it and made my life easier. I have chosen this path because we need leaders to choose this path, because there is no other way of actually fighting against the dystopian future that stares humanity in the face unless we have a real fight back. And there is no prospect of a fight back unless millions of ordinary people, working people, are mobilized. That is the core ground rule. Without that, there isn't any shift happening. And that's
Yes, I
why,
agree.
as far as congressional elections are concerned, it's not how many progressives are elected, because by that measure, so many progressives have been elected, but not one single one. And that this applies to the Republicans as well. None of them is willing to mobilize the working class, the power of organized working class people to come to bear, because that is the only thing that the capitalist class, the billionaires and the multimillionaires, they fear is for the stability of their profit making machine. And as long as that is not under threat, you cannot actually win victories, especially something as monumental as ending the genocide and ending military aid to Israel. That is not a tiny thing, because think about it, for the billionaire class, for the capitalist class to concede on something so huge like that, something that is internationally pivotal, that would take an almighty militant struggle, because the billionaires are not stupid. They understand that if they conceded on the issue of Israel war funding and the ending of the genocide and dismantling of the apartheid state of Israel, which is what I want to do, that
Reach.
it will send us, it will be the emboldening of the global working class on a scale that hasn't been seen in our lifetimes. And the capitalist class is loath to allow that to happen, which also then the corollary of that is why it will not be done without militant movements. And that is why, that whole debate this morning about, oh, well, can't you do this by electing this or that? No, you can't. You need fighters in Congress who are willing to use their office to mobilize all those working people in all those red states and all those blue states and all those purple states who are dying for a fight against the bosses but aren't getting that fight, even though you had millions of people march and no kings and so on and so forth, which are just release valve protests. People are hungering for a real fight back.
Well, that's why I named this No Peasants, because I just thought it was as Margaret Kimberly called it, it was just a get out the vote campaign for Democrats. And likewise with some of the impeachment efforts, they don't want to talk about let's set the precedent if we impeach anyone, that it wages an illegal war. They didn't want to talk about that, right, Sam? You were at that panel. Which reminds me, do you know Nadia Milleron, running independent in Massachusetts?
I don't.
Kshama, do you know her?
Did you say Nadia something?
Nadia Milleron. She's actually Ralph Nader's niece, and her daughter was killed in one of the Boeing Max 8 crashes.
Oh my God.
And she's been fighting. I think she did win the most recent hearing or part of the case against Boeing, but she's been fighting that since that happened. I think, gosh, I forget what year now, but 2017, I think.
2018, yeah, 17, 18, something like
Yeah,
that.
that's right. It was the second crash because they were negligent. But anyway, she's running in Massachusetts. I forget the district right now, but again, against some Democrat, warmonger that's been in office since 1988 or something like that. So I think she has a pretty good shot too. And I really want to see, almost every candidate we talk to, I think would be an improvement to what we have now, right? But Kshama, do you have another Democrat in your primary though? A woman, I don't remember her name. Can you tell me what's the situation there?
Yeah, I mean that absolutely, Kelly. I'm so glad you asked, because that's a very concrete question right now as we head to the August 4th primary election, and I'll talk about that in a second. But just to say as a preface that between that situation that I'm about to describe and the corporate media blackout and also the progressive media blackout, that is part of what has made this an uphill challenge. And so, yes, this is a jungle primary state, meaning all candidates, regardless of party affiliation, run in the same primary. And the top two vote getters in the primary election move on to the November election. And obviously, Adam Smith is going to be one of those top two. The question is who the other will be. And we are fighting hard, obviously, to be one of the top two vote getters. But there is a Republican in the race. There's also another Democrat in the race. And they're both effectively and in the Republicans' case, openly, admittedly, playing the role of trying to make they're not really running against Adam Smith. They're really running against our campaign in order to make sure that we don't advance to the November election. And as far as the Democratic Party strategy is concerned, this is what they're relying on. See, because the reality is that if our campaign were to advance to the November election, it would be a head-to-head match between this arch Zionist genocidal Democrat Adam Smith, who, he can't launder his reputation. He has been in Congress for 29 years, which is longer than many of my campaign volunteers have been alive, because it's a young campaign. And he is one of the last remaining House Democrats who also voted for the war on Iraq. So his blood-drenched record ranges for 30 years, and there's no way he can suddenly pretend to be anti-war. He is an arch-Zionist warmonger, and he's bankrolled by these war profiteering billionaires. And that is why a head-to-head match between an anti-war revolutionary socialist who has a track record of winning victories and defeating the billionaires and this arch-Zionist Democrat warmonger, that head-to-head combat, that is going to be electrifying. And we will have an actual shot to defeat Adam Smith. Again, I'm not saying it will be easy. I'm just saying that it will be a real shot to take him out. And it's not just about taking him out. It is about delivering a stinging defeat, a rebuke to the billionaire class and to the war industry as a whole. And so the best bet that the Democratic establishment has is to keep me out of the November election. And that's what's playing out. That's the fight that's playing out now. And it's a bit hard to explain to people, understandably, because they're tuned out of the primary elections. They're tuned out of elections in general, but especially in the primary election, it's mostly the conservative and older voters who vote. And so that's our challenge, to energize the younger voter base, the working class base, who don't even know that there is a primary election. That's a big problem we're trying to overcome. And so you have a Republican, Doug Bassler, who has openly admitted that he was recruited to keep me out of the November election, and the Democrat who's running a campaign that is just really there's no momentum. And she's raised like $23,000 throughout the campaign. She, in the Stranger interview in the Stranger newspaper, which is a local newspaper, which is one of the two most significant endorsements in this region, and they do a debate style interview. Adam Smith didn't even bother to show up to that interview because he doesn't want to debate me.
They never do.
No, they never do. And in fact, he sent a pouting letter to the Stranger with all his complaints listed and everything. And so the debate was between me and Melissa Chowdhury, this other Democrat. And through the questioning, it emerged that I pointed out that she has nothing on her website about LGBTQ rights. And she, not a word, like that doesn't even appear. And then she said that, she does not want to talk about LGBTQ rights because that offends a certain community she is trying to curry favor with, which is absolutely not, so the Stranger wrote about this openly. And in fact, the one organization, the 33rd LD Legislative District of Democrats who endorsed her, they actually publicly posted that we want to rescind our endorsement, and we're looking into our bylaws on how we can rescind the endorsement to her, because there is no way that she can just sell out a whole oppressed community, a marginalized community like that. But it's not only that. She didn't have the words Israel, Palestine, occupation, genocide on her website. She never talked about any of that, and she still doesn't. She'll talk in general terms when her back is against the wall, but she does not she's not running on any of these demands. And again, it is going to effectively, whatever her intentions might be, it is going to end up benefiting the establishment if she can take just enough votes away from us. And that's why we are explaining to the communities that we're canvassing that, look, we have to be strategic and understand that a divided vote actually ends up ensuring that Adam Smith is reelected. So if our goal is to defeat Adam Smith, then our campaign is the campaign to support, because we have, the momentum that we have is just orders of magnitude higher than anything she's doing. There's no comparison. There's just really no comparison at all. When the Stranger endorsed my campaign, they said so, that, it's important that progressives vote for Kshama Sawant's campaign because this is our one shot to defeat Adam Smith. And we are trying to convey that message to working people everywhere. And in the Muslim community, because she's Muslim and she wants to represent them. Actually, a lot of the Muslims.
She's a Muslim and she's not said anything about Israel.
Yes, exactly. Uh, yeah, exactly. I mean, I mean, that is, Sam, and I really appreciate your comment, because, the question really that's begged here is, are we going to keep the interests of the Palestinian people at the center? I mean, if you saw the photo that is being circulated on social media today of that baby that was, I'm sorry, this is really horrible, annihilated by a phosphorus bomb, if you see that, and if your commitment is not absolutely focused on ending the genocide, then nothing else matters. Not the only real test of your integrity as a candidate in this midterm election is that, are you willing to do everything in your power to stop that? And that is what we are trying to stop. And it's not just about, it's not, I didn't just come out of nowhere saying I want to stop this. I actually have a long track record of fighting against the Israeli state. In 2014, when I was on the Seattle City Council, when it was by no means a popular issue to be anti-Israel, I sent a public letter to Obama and Congress, and Adam Smith was in Congress at that time too, saying that that we need to stop military aid to Israel. And then just before I left office in November 2023, the genocide had already begun. I fought for and won the nation's second and strongest resolution against the genocide, and demanding that military aid be stopped to Israel. And so, and since then, we've been fighting on those lines consistently. And I think that is why it is so crucial to elect a fighter to Congress who will actually fight on this. I mean, I have pledged that if elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally of 10,000 people in Washington, D.C., and immediately use my congressional office to launch nationwide mass campaigns to end all military aid and also to win free healthcare for all. I mean, because we need to mobilize the masses who are angry at the wars. And Kelly, you're totally right. Many of the people who voted for Trump voted for him because he said no more wars. And here he is perpetuating an unwinnable war where there is just wanton destruction. And now there's an attempt to hide the number of US soldiers who were killed. I mean, this is a dead end. This is a bloody, bloody dead end for the working class internationally. And that is why this is an absolutely urgent fight.
Kelly, I'd love to share a little bit about my district, and I'd love to get Kshama's thoughts and your and Phil's thoughts. I mean, it's mostly Prince George's County, suburb of DC, a lot of government workers. It's known as the wealthiest Black majority district. It's about 55% African American. I live in sort of a, College Park, Hyattsville, Laurel corridor, which is a bit more artsy and lefty and so on, in Greenbelt. And but it's I mean, I think part of your success, Kshama, is that you've given such voice to the righteous anger that people do feel. But I also feel like a lot of people, particularly in districts like this, where the Democrat, wins by 90%, that there's this like defeatism and acquiescence, and particularly, and that's part of the problem here, but it's also part of the opportunity. I mean, if I can, launch a campaign here that activates people, including people who are in government, who might have to keep their heads down because they're government jobs, but they know a lot of things about how rancid the system is. If I can activate that in a major DC suburb to break people out of their sleepiness and acquiescence to the system, that's part of the opportunity that I see. And I think that's part of the reason that I and other people have been so drawn to what you're doing, and that you do tap into that anger and in such a constructive way.
Yeah, I particularly like the word you used, a rancid system. I think that will resonate with a lot of people, even the people who might be doing decently well in terms of their living standards are also angry. And I think that might apply to your district. I'm obviously, I apologize, Sam, that I don't know details about the district that you're running in. So, sorry,
Yeah,
go
let
ahead.
me just share one other thing. It's represented by Glenn Ivey, who's it had been represented by Donna Edwards, who's one of the few members of Congress who actually went to Gaza. She's as decent as a progressive Democrat as you're going to get, pretty much. And she ran for the Senate, lost in the Senate, and then tried to get her seat back. And they brought in Glenn Ivey, and AIPAC gave him like $8 million and just flooded the airwaves with all of these attack ads, none of which mentioned Israel. They just threw all kinds of accusations at Donna Edwards and got Glenn Ivey in there. And he's been told he went and he visited Netanyahu at least twice, maybe 3 times during the height of the genocide. But he, like Adam Smith, he's pretending to vote. You know, he voted against NDAA and he voted for the Massey Amendment because he knew that his vote wasn't needed. Obviously, I'm sure that his vote would have been there for AIPAC and company if they needed it, but he needs to posture in this way, like so many Democrats do. So those are some of the dynamics, and it's a real challenge to to get local people, even activists, to see how cynical this is and how we need to find a way to really make people see how insidious this system is at a deep level, and to really activate this district.
Right. I think that there are some real challenges there, and we should obviously keep talking offline in the coming months in order to see how to build a potential campaign. But I think you're on the right track in the sense that Glenn Ivey, I am assuming, I mean, if he was bankrolled by, is it a he or
He?
If he was bankrolled by AIPAC, I assume he has a similar record to Adam Smith in terms of funding the genocide and being pro-Israel.
Right.
And so I think that, that is absolutely, I think, the central component of any independent left campaign we would run against the guy like that, because that is the majority of people will be on the side of this. It's a question of how do we organize a campaign on concrete demands. And I think even though it sounds like an obvious thing, I think we all will agree that, and I think all speakers have already said so to that effect, that having concrete demands in the campaign is super crucial to engage, especially as an independent left campaign, to engage the working class, because otherwise they don't see the potential of what we should do. And one of the messages that I think we should talk about is how these, as you were saying, the Democrats keep getting elected by 80-90%, whatever majority. That's true in this district as well. I mean, maybe not quite as much, but quite as much percentage, but by solid majorities every re-election that Adam Smith has won. And one of the things that we have been pointing out is that doesn't mean that the district wants to be Democrat, or that it's not ready for an independent. All that means is that there's never been a credible challenge to these Democrats. That is why they keep getting re-elected by default. And so challenging that default situation by presenting an alternative, I think, is crucial. And then the other issue, I think, that is a really winning issue, even among working people who might have better living standards, which may be true in that district to some degree, is healthcare. And so here in our campaign, we have a lot of tech workers, including tech workers who work at Amazon and other corporations, Boeing and so on, who are supporting our campaign. They're not suffering from the cost of living crisis in the way that the average working people are suffering, but they see, even they will tell you that I can tell how little of what I'm doing comes to me, and most of it goes to the executives, the billionaire shareholders. So they are starting to understand the class component of that too. And on top of that, they are extremely angry at how their tech work is used in service of genocide and slaughter, and also ICE terror. Because if you see AI, especially AI specifically, but tech in general, is now being used as a central component for ICE terror and for imperialist war. And I think more and more people are waking up to that.
Sam, do you know what the voter turnout percentages were in your district?
Substantial, not tremendous. I think that they'll be
Okay.
fairly high in this election because there's a gubernatorial race going on as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll probably get people out.
Mm-hmm. Um, so I know you've been incredibly busy, Kshama. Thank you so much for taking so much time with us. Before we go, I wondered if, or if we're wrapping up, I just wanted to share something. Give me just a second to do a share screen here. I should have had this prepared. So as I said before, when I was talking about election security, it is really, unfortunately, a very polarized issue. I spent a number of years, I first became interested in this back in 2016, and 2016, 2018, when Tim Canova was running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and there was some real good evidence that there was funny business going on in that election. And then, and so all of the people that I met back then were all Democrats. So, I mean, most people think of, if you say anything about there's something wrong with the elections or they're not transparent or whatever, that it's because of the Stop the Steal movement, after 2020. People always think, oh, that's just a Republican issue. And it isn't, or it shouldn't be. And I just wanted to share this, if I can, sorry, I'm having a technical issue right now. Let me see if I can get this up. And in June, oh, here it is. Okay. In June, we, in one of the meetings I hold weekly, and if anyone listening is interested, please contact me. You can join one of our meetings. We have cybersecurity professionals that are, you know what, it's not, my screen is not letting me share it. I'll just tell you about it. So there was a PBS report that came out, and it was just kind of a strange interview. They were saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with the election system. Like, you don't need to worry about that. And, which nothing's changed. I mean, we have black box voting, and there are, in fact, voting machines connected to the internet. So, or that have that capability. But anyway, I'm watching this PBS report, and I was just curious because they're interviewing that person, and they said, well, no, there's nothing to worry about, but we are worried about AI and misinformation campaigns, which is true. I mean, we saw this happen with Massey's race, right? But anyway, I look and I'm like, what is this company? And they had the actual report, the cybersecurity report. And I'm going to try one more time to share this. We just, in the middle of the meeting, my jaw just hit the desk. I thought, what is going on here? Okay, here we go. One more time. Hopefully this will work. Okay, I think it's going to let me pull this up. Yay, okay, it is. So this checkpoint security PBS is pushing out information from them, and I don't have the brochure to pull up. But if you look at it, their reports, excuse me, I called it a brochure because we were jokingly saying it sounded like, or it looked like a brochure. It's a report, but it's full of AI, and it's full of fear-mongering about Russia, China, and Iran, that they're going to run misinformation campaigns against the U.S. public, right? And so then when we looked, lo and behold,
Yeah.
the entire leadership of this company, Checkpoint, which has federal contracts all over the place, is all Israeli. And I don't mean Israeli like nothing against, regular people in Israel or Jewish people, but this leadership is all former IDF, except maybe one, former IDF, and former Unit 8200, which is like Israel's NSA, for anyone that doesn't know. But I just was shocked to find this. And then also maybe about a week or so around the same time, Joe Kent put out a post, and it was when they were talking about, all the talk started about the joining of forces of the military with, what was in the NDAA. And Joe Kent put this post out, and he said, Israel has unprecedented access to our government and electoral systems. And I just I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and no one is it's like no one paid attention to it at all. I guess because it's taboo, depending on where you are in the political spectrum, to talk about it. But I am very concerned about this because we talk a lot in our meetings about the vulnerabilities that we have in our election system. So I just wanted to call attention to that. It's it's a topic a lot of people they're not interested. It's dry, it's technical, but I think it's very important. And I was just very worried. Why is PBS like pushing this stuff from this company?
And
Very
sorry,
weird.
Kelly, can you, I may have missed this. How is PBS pushing this? In what way are they promoting
Well,
it?
I mean, they did this interview, and I wish I had my clip ready. They did this interview with the guy, the American, okay, and the American guy, he had spent a lot of time in Israel, but they're presenting them as authorities in election security, and he actually even states in the video the interview clip that the machines aren't connected to the internet, which you can look, I mean, you can see Alex Halderman and people in Congress, computer scientists have testified that yes, some of them do have the capability to do that. So it was just the fact that they were pushing them as like they're the security experts that you should listen to. And it really alarm bells went off for me because I thought, they're fear mongering. It's all Israeli and they're fear mongering about Russia, China, and Iran.
Everybody but them. The
But
corruption, I think
everybody but them, and
we
they're
all,
telling lies.
I think those on this here, those all of us agree that the corruption is right in front of us for anyone who wants to open their eyes and look. It's our job to present that to the public in their interest so that they're willing to rise up and help us overturn the unit party.
Yeah.
That's the general goal. And that's what I was getting to, I don't know, a while back about that question. It's like, how do we get people engaged on that? They should care. We care. Not enough of them care enough yet, but it's our job whichever direction we're coming from as independent third party candidates to show them how bad it is and provide a person that they can have hope for that will stand up in Congress and do something about it and not fold in half the first time we're offered, 6 figures or 7 figures from AIPAC or whatever. They have to believe in us.
This sort of dovetails with a problem that I have with some of these Democrats who are seem like critics of Israel. They assume this posture of like, I'm more concerned about issues here in the district rather than Israel. Mamdani sort of struck this chord in the Michigan race, and so on. And in some extent, I get it, but in some respect, it's Israel is a domestic issue in so many ways. In a facile manner about the amount of money that we're spending. Besides the small matter of the morality of slaughtering people, the fact that so much money is going towards it, but the fact that it is tied in with big tech, with all of these aspects of manipulation and oppression and so on, it sort of dovetails with the whole Palestine laboratory thing of these mechanisms of oppression that are sort of tried out on Palestinians and then can be utilized against others, including U.S. citizens, and police training, all kinds of insidious ways that the imperial relationship between the U.S. establishment and Israel is a domestic issue.
Yeah, not just the money we're sending there, but the money they spend on our politicians, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's really, if you track OPAC like I do,
ways.
It's just shocking. And it has to be a quid pro quo. It absolutely has to, because you can tell by how they vote.
Absolutely. And that is definitely something, I mean, that's across the, whatever, libertarians and Greens, independents, all agree on that. I mean, we don't even have real representation.
Right. Whatever government we have, and it might be a lot for you guys, it might be a little for me, but it's got to be clean, right? Otherwise, the whole premise of the United States representative government delegating our rights to be governed, all that stuff is just completely out the window. That we can agree on, and that we need to try to reclaim by working together.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we will wrap it up there.
Thank you, Kelly.
Anything else you guys want to mention that we didn't get into?
I think my webpage for my exploratory committee is up, samhusseini.com.
Oh, okay, great.
So I thought I'd share that.
Okay.
So Sam, what's your mechanism
But
for being on the ballot? How's that
oh,
work? How's that work for you?
yeah. I'm sorry, I should have noted that at the beginning. The Green Party, through the dedication of a handful, or I don't know how many, but some number of activists got the Green Party on the ballot, and they're the only party other than the Democrats and Republicans who were on the ballot in Maryland. And so they came to me and said, would like you to run for something, and the most obvious thing was for me to run for Congress in the district.
So they could
where I
get ballot
live.
access without a candidate name right off the bat.
Yeah, right,
Okay,
right off
I don't
the
think
bat.
that's very common.
I just simply
Thank you.
accept their nomination,
Nice.
and I can be on the ballot against Glenn Ivey. So that's what I'm
That's
considering.
great. Yeah, that's great, because that is a huge problem with like how many conversations have we had about that, Phil, about the ballot access problem?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
the powers that be are trying to stop candidates like you guys. I mean, at every step of the way.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, and you don't have to be you have to just be aware of what voting machines you have. And I hope to see that topic will become more less taboo.
I should say I'm very grateful for Mark Ellis, who's running for governor as a Green and has been the main organizer, and so on, who really put this together.
Great. And Sam, you don't have is that the campaign website? Did you just mention?
Yeah, I have my
.com, right?
Yeah, samhusseini.com is my campaign website. People might already know my Substack is husseini.substack.com. But the campaign, it's not a campaign, it's exploratory committee website, just went live like 3 hours ago.
And you can also, it's husseini.org, right? Where you can see all of your social media and everything.
I'll be adding it to that momentarily.
Okay, right. And you're active on Twitter, so.
Too active, yes.
Hey, that's where we were able to say whatever we wanted, right?
For a while.
For a while, yeah, not anymore.
Back in the good old days.
Well, Kshama, it was really, really wonderful to meet you. I didn't actually talk to you, but I saw you speak at People's Convergence, I believe it was, September 2017 at American University.
Yeah, I remember that.
I can't believe that was like almost 9 years ago.
I know. Seriously, time flies. Nice, really nice being part of this conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me, Kelly, and really great to have this conversation with everybody here. If you're watching this, please help us get out the vote between now and August 4th. We have just about a week left. Go to Kshama Sawant, my first name, last name.org, and sign up for canvassing shifts. It doesn't matter where you are in the nation. You can sign up for a phone banking shift if you're not in the area close to Washington State's 9th Congressional District. Every phone banking shift you sign up for helps us get out the vote. Please donate to our campaign as well. I mean, I should mention also that we've raised $700,000 in this campaign, all through grassroots working class donations. And our median donation is 25, and the median donation of Adam Smith is 1,000, not surprisingly. And we have 8.5 times more donors in district than does Adam Smith. And so really you can have what everybody calls a people powered campaign. I would call it a working class powered campaign. It's possible to do that. And so that's why I really urge everybody to support us, because it is, objectively speaking, by any metric, the strongest ever challenge to Adam Smith. And so we need to make the most of it. And Kelly, as you asked, and I was able to respond, that what we are up against is the divided vote, and then making sure that our campaign is one of the top 2 vote getters. That is our challenge at this moment in order to be able to get into the November election.
Well, I have no doubt you will be a fighter in Congress. And thank you, Sam. And Phil, if you're thinking about running again, right, in 2028?
Yeah, I'm considering it. We'll see how things play out.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad
that'll be my sixth time. So
Wow. But as you
so-
said, and as Kshama has proven, it's like this is an effort that takes a long time, over elections. It's not,
right.
I think, obviously you're very well known in your community, Kshama, and that's, that means a lot. As much as I think I focus a lot as on the media and like the messaging and stuff, but I realize that stuff online, while it does have an impact on people, I think on the ground, where people live is really ultimately more important, because if they know you're going to go there and fight for them, right? That's what I
Yes.
think. Okay. All right. Well, I will end the live here. Thank you so much.